on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison Lagrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Nepal's army patrols the streets of Kathmandu amid a curfew after 2 days of deadly anti-corruption protests, forced Prime Minister KP Sharma Ali to resign. French police arrest nearly 200 as protests erupt across the nation, with demonstrators clashing with police and burning trash bins 2 days after Prime Minister François Bayrou's government collapsed over planned budget cuts. Poland shoots down drones that entered its airspace during a widespread Russian attack in western Ukraine, calling the incursion an act of aggression and marking the first time a NATO member has fired shots in the war. Israel's UN envoy defends strikes on Hamas leaders in Qatar, says his country does not always act in US interests amid a rare rebuke from Donald Trump. And flash floods sweep 2 Indonesian islands, including tourist hotspot Bali, killing at least 6 people, with 4 others missing. Hello and welcome. Let's start with South Africa, which is in Trump's line of fire. From slapping 30% tariffs to cutting financial aid, Trump's attack on South Africa has been open and loud, and he is showing no sign of softening his stance anytime soon. Trump will also be skipping the G20 summit in South Africa this year. Instead, he will be sending his deputy, JD Vance, in his place.
Questions on the G20, sir. Is there any update on your plans to attend this year's G20? And then are you saying for next year?
I won't be going this year. It's in South Africa. I won't be going. JD will be going, great Vice President, and he looks forward to it. But no, I won't be going to that.
And this is a symbolic snub. The US will take over the G20 presidency in 2026. Last week, the US president announced the next summit will be held in Miami at the Trump National Doral Golf Course. Now, traditionally, the outgoing host closely works with Now, this is a symbolic snub. Trump is disengaging just as he prepares to host a G20 summit. By deciding to skip the G20 summit, Trump has yet again made his dislike towards South Africa clear. But the Ramaphosa government is still hoping to strike a trade deal with the US. Months of negotiations have failed so far, but the stakes are too high for Pretoria to just give up, which is why South Africa has sent officials to the US for trade negotiations.
Our government is therefore in continued engagement with the United States to secure what we would term a mutually beneficial trade and investment deal. The Presidency and the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition have sent representatives who are currently in the United States, who are preparing for the further formal negotiations with the United States government, which should be taking place in just a few days. They are meeting a number of stakeholders as they are in both New York and Washington, including representatives of the administration, legislators, business people, and a whole number of other people.
Trump has had a tense relationship with this year's G20 host, South Africa, and the country's President Ramaphosa. Pretoria's foreign and domestic policies have drawn sharp criticism from the US, and Trump has made his dislike clear over and over again. Back in March, Washington expelled a South African ambassador for criticizing President Trump. Tensions reached a new high in May when Trump turned an Oval Office meeting with Ramaphosa into a full-blown confrontation. The meeting was supposed to reset diplomatic ties, but it ended up further straining it. Trump launched back-to-back attacks on Ramaphosa. Trump alleged that white farmers are being persecuted in South Africa and their lands are being forcefully taken away. Ramaphosa denied all allegations, but Trump went on with his white genocide claims.
Articles over the last few days. Death of people. Death. Horrible death. Death. And those people in many cases are being executed. They're being executed. And they happen to be white, and most of them happen to be farmers. And that's a tough situation. I don't know how you explain that. How do you explain that? They're taking people's land away, and in many cases those people are being executed, and in many cases it's not the government that's doing it, it's people that kill them and then take their land, and nothing happens to them. But we have thousands of people that want to come into our country. They're also going to Australia.
Earlier this year in February, Trump administration also granted refugee status to white South Africans, who are known as Afrikaners. He alleged that South Africa's black government was discriminating against white people by bringing in laws to redress the legacy of apartheid. Now, this includes the land expropriation law and black economic empowerment laws. Trump is also unhappy with South Africa's genocide case against its close ally Israel at the World Court. So Trump has a lot to complain about. For his part, will Ramaphosa's latest attempt to appease Trump be successful, or will it meet the same fate as the previous ones? Now, for more on this, we have with us Patrick Bond, a political economist, joining us live from Johannesburg, South Africa. Great to have you on the show again, Patrick.
Thanks. Wonderful to be with you, Alison.
Now, how significant is President Trump's decision to skip the G20 summit in Johannesburg? And what message does it send about the state of the US-South Africa relations under his administration?
Well, they're obviously at a low point. The only hope is that one of the new ambassadors, a special advisor to Ramaphosa on investment, named Alistair Reuters, is actually there now and trying to do some behind-the-scenes trade deal making. But I think two other processes reflect how tense the situation is. One is that the basic themes of the G20, which are solidarity and equality and sustainability, these have been rejected, especially by Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, since February. And I think we should see what Trump is doing with his manipulation of the G20 and sabotage of South Africa's hosting in that bigger context that the G20, he believes, should not be overly broad and should not extend beyond just financial management questions. So he doesn't like climate and he doesn't like public health. And the second factor is that the BRICS met on Monday, and they were supposed to be coming up with collective reactions to Trump's illegal trade tariffs and his trade policy, which is very destructive for China and South Africa at more than 30% tariffs, but especially India and the host Brazil at 50%. But they did nothing. And I think that's one of the problems, is that there's a lot of talk about opposing Trump, but we haven't yet seen real muscle yet come to the table from the BRICS side and from South Africa's side. Like, for example, saying, well, maybe Trump, you shouldn't even be in the G20 for 4 years. Let's kick out the United States out. To me, is the only way you fight back against a bully.
Right. And with the US imposing the 30% tariffs on South African exports and, of course, suspending financial aid, how vulnerable is South Africa's economy to these measures? And what leverage does Pretoria have in the ongoing trade talks?
Well, the main thing that South Africa has is 85% of the world's platinum, plus a large share, about 40% of chrome. And these are the two main minerals exports. And very revealingly, they carry a 0% tariff. That means Trump and his corporates really want those minerals to come from South African mines to the US unimpeded. So that's 0%. And then you have the Afrikaner farmers who make, for example, citrus and macadamia nuts and vineyards, the grapes, the wine. Those are being hit with the 30% tariff just in the last month for the first time. That's very hard. Plus, you've got 50% on steel and aluminium, which has been a very important export. And then automobiles with 25%. Now, those are the basic tariff lines. Devastating. In comparison to what existed before in March. And in comparison to then, South Africa's trade has plummeted more than 67% in some of those categories. Aside from minerals, this is a devastating effect, especially on jobs and industrial output.
Yeah. And given Trump's repeated allegations about white farmers, his stance on the Israel-Hamas conflict, and, of course, the expulsion of South Africa's previous U.S. ambassador, how might these tensions affect South Africa's broader international standing, both within the G20 and with other global partners?
Alison, I recall when in January 2024, just a year and a half or so ago, South Africa was courageous by itself going to the International Court of Justice, as you remind us, to declare genocide was underway. Now it's common knowledge, and every human rights group in the world and many governments are now saying to Israel, stop the genocide. And it's that, let me say, the talk left, the ability to go to The Hague and make a case that has some upstanding moral standpoint, because, of course, South Africa had its own extreme oppression, apartheid. And that, to me, is where the South African government
Yes.
should be bearing down and not kowtowing anymore to the frankly reactionary and genocide facilitating United States. And I think when we saw Narendra Modi begin to drift off away from a close personal connection to Trump, and we saw Lula get furious, that should have been a signal over the last few weeks that South Africa could do more collectively. But there is a mindset in Pretoria, which is pro-business and let's go and do a deal, no matter how ridiculous. Games of golf, or inviting in U.S. oil companies for fracking support, all these sorts of things that are on the table. It just isn't working so far, and there's no reason to think that it will change matters drastically. And instead, in 2026, it looks like Donald Trump will inherit the G20 and simply ignore all the work being done in South Africa and the year before in Brazil and the year before that in India. It's a deep tragedy that we haven't taken advantage of this opportunity to rally the world on something that's so obvious, just as Israel's genocide is today, obvious that Donald Trump has no place in a G20 or multilateralism when all his intents are simply to come and destroy.
Right. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa.
Thank you.
And moving on, let's turn our attention to Ethiopia. On Tuesday, Ethiopia inaugurated Africa's largest dam. Its downstream neighbors, Egypt and Sudan, are unhappy about it. And amid the diplomatic spat, Kenyan President William Ruto has offered to help mediate the differences among the neighbors. President Ruto was one of the chief guests at the GERD's inauguration. He hailed the dam as a Pan-African statement.
National project. It is a Pan-African statement. It exemplifies the scale and ambition of African-led infrastructure and aligns with Africa Union's vision of continental energy connectivity. Despite Africa's vast renewable resources, the continent accounts for only 6% of global energy use, while nearly half of Africans, over 600 million people, still lack access to electricity.
Speaking at the dam's inauguration ceremony, Ruto also hinted at signing a power purchase agreement with Ethiopia to utilize the resources of the dam and to alleviate the electricity deficit his country is experiencing. Kenya is already an importer of Ethiopia's electricity.
We are ready to sign a power purchase agreement so that we can offtake some of the power from this important dam. Reliability is especially critical for special economic zones, industrial parks, ICT hubs, and agro-processing facilities, all of which require consistent and affordable power to drive Kenya's development agenda.
Along with Ruto, other regional leaders were also in attendance. South Sudan's President Salva Kiir and Somalia's President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud also attended the dam's inauguration, lauding Ethiopia's efforts. The presence of Somalia's president is even more significant given Somalia's close ties with Egypt, which has repeatedly called the dam an existential threat. Egypt has written a letter to the UN Security Council describing the dam's inauguration as a unilateral measure that violates international law. Cairo also accused Addis Ababa of attempting to give a false cover of acceptance and legitimacy to the dam. Egypt's anger is fueled by its fear of losing access to the Nile. GERD is built on the Blue Nile, which is a major tributary of the Nile River, and Egypt depends on the Nile for over 90% of its water. Along with Egypt, Sudan too is concerned about reduced water flows because of the dam, despite reassurances from Ethiopia. Now, while speaking at the dam's inauguration, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed reiterated that the dam would not hurt Ethiopia's neighbors.
To our brotherly downstream countries, Ethiopia built the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam to bring prosperity, light up the region, and change the history of black people, not to harm any of our neighbors. To our brothers who may have concerns, I assure you that Ethiopia will never take away your rightful share. Today, I make this promise before my people. The hunger of our brothers in Egypt, in Sudan, or anywhere else is also our hunger. We must share and grow together, for we have no intention of harming anyone.
Egypt and Sudan see the GERD as a threat, but for Ethiopia it is a springboard for a better future. The dam has been designed to generate over 5,000 megawatts of electricity. That is more than double Ethiopia's current capacity. Now, GERD's inauguration is a big win for Ethiopia, where around 45% of the population lacks electricity, and frequent blackouts force businesses and households to rely on generators. The dam is also fully financed by Ethiopia. No foreign assistance was taken. And now that the dam is officially inaugurated, millions of Ethiopians are hoping for a better future, the one in which electricity is not scarce but abundant. GERD could potentially revolutionize Ethiopia's energy sector and boost its economy. But its inauguration has also fueled the power tussle over access to the Nile's water. President Ruto has pitched in to mediate the dispute, and now it remains to be seen if he can actually do it. And how will it impact Kenya's relations with Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan? And shifting focus to Egypt, which has just hosted one of the world's largest and most strategic military drills. The multinational Bright Star 25 exercise is now being concluded in Egypt. Bright Star is a biennial large-scale drill co-hosted by the United States and Egypt, with the aim of strengthening defense cooperation, enhancing interoperability, and reinforcing regional stability. Over the years, it has expanded to involve tens of thousands of personnel from across the world. This edition ran from the 28th of August to the 10th of September, bringing together over 40 nations, including India, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Italy, Greece, and many others.
Scope and scale of Bright Star 25 has grown immensely. If you look at today's exercise that we've been developing for the past 18 months, we have over 40 countries participating and observing, and over 8,500 soldiers, sailors, airmen, marine from all over the world that have come to Egypt, into this Alexandria region to show partnership and to train shoulder to shoulder.
India made its biggest ever contribution, sending more than 700 personnel from the Army, Navy, and Air Force. The deployment included Su-30 MKI fighters, AZ-17 Globemaster, and naval ship INS Trikand. Now, India's participation is aimed at enhancing joint cooperation with friendly nations and strengthening collective efforts for peace and stability. The exercise included field training, command post drills, senior leadership seminars, academic exchanges, and combined armed operations. A major counter-terrorism drill was also staged, featuring parachute insertions, assaults on simulated strongholds, and coordinated joint force operations.
The primary objectives that we saw in Bright Star 25 were to develop partnerships that are able to deter and defend, and so we can promote security and prosperity in the region. And I think Bright Star is an excellent example of that imperative between Egypt and the United States, that we continue this work and we continue to strive for stability in this region.
This year's exercise was held amid heightened global and regional tensions. Staging such a massive multinational drill at this moment sends a clear signal of deterrence and readiness. It underscores the evolving security dynamics of the region and highlights the importance of collective preparedness in a complex geopolitical landscape. As Bright Star 25 wraps up, the message is clear. In a region grappling with conflicts and uncertainty, joint military cooperation remains crucial to ensuring stability and readiness. And our last story for today comes from North Africa, where Morocco has struck gold, literally. A major gold discovery could transform the country's mining sector and its position in the African and global market. Now, geologists have discovered high-grade gold deposits in Morocco's Julemin region, with grades reaching up to 30 grams per ton, which is considered world-class. Now, mining professionals have identified 34 quartz veins, each showing signs of rich gold content. Preliminary estimates suggest the region could yield between 3 and 5 million ounces of gold, and this can vastly outstrip Morocco's current annual output of just over 100 kilograms. The discovery emerged from systematic exploration combining geological mapping, targeted trenching, and shaft sampling to access fresh materials beneath the weathered surface zones. Morocco is already rich in natural resources, including phosphates, silver, copper, lead, zinc, and manganese. Gold has so far played a minor role. Despite having relatively low gold production, Morocco still manages to export a decent amount of the shiny metal. Now, in 2023, Morocco exported $27.7 million worth of gold, ranking 120th globally and making it a relatively small player in the global market. This new discovery could revamp that, opening doors for significant export growth and investment in the sector. Currently, Africa's top gold producers include Ghana, South Africa, Mali, and Sudan, all countries with well-established mining infrastructure. They produce gold in the range of several 100,000 to millions of ounces per year. By contrast, Morocco's gold production is modest, just over 100 kilograms annually, making it a relatively small player on the continent. Now, with the new discovery, Morocco could move from being a minor producer to a strong contender in the continental market, potentially joining the top 10 producers. But this discovery is more than what it appears on the surface level. It signals a turning point for Morocco's economy, attracting foreign investment and strengthening the country's role in North Africa's mining sector. Mining experts believe that if fully developed, this region could generate new jobs, boost export revenues, and enhance technological capacity in mineral extraction. With this new gold discovery, Morocco stands on the threshold of a mining revolution, poised to turn its historically minor gold sector into a major player on the African continent, a development that could add a literal golden chapter to the country's economic story. And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.